I lived in a small apartment for most of my 20s, as it was all I could afford since I lived alone. My complex was small and only had 6 total apartments in it. Most of the people living there were older, retired, and kept to themselves. I actually liked the fact that I didn't have to interact with anyone whenever I needed to go in or out of the complex, as I was usually in a rush or just not in the mood to socialize. I lived on the top floor, and the room across from me had an old couple living there for almost 2 years before they moved out. I never talked to them, so I didn't really care, to be honest. Several months went by before someone new moved in, and another 2 weeks passed before I actually met them. One morning, as I was getting ready for work and preparing my packed lunch, I heard the neighbor's door open. I didn't think much of it until a minute later when I realized that I never heard the door close. I finished getting ready, put my shoes on, and opened my door to leave. I immediately noticed that the neighbor's door was still open, and a tall man in his 40s or 50s was standing right outside, facing me. He smiled and introduced himself. I faked a short smile, told him my name, and mentioned I had to go to work before I started walking past him. As I started down the stairs, he asked me to come in for a little bit and have breakfast with him. This was really weird, as I had just told him I needed to go to work. I simply said, "Sorry," and continued down the stairs and out of the complex. While I was at work that day, I thought about how strange the interaction was. Thankfully, when I got home, I was able to get into my apartment without any interaction. The next morning, I woke up to a knock at the front door. I was really annoyed because I had to work that day and now I was up early. I quickly got dressed and opened the front door. My neighbor was there, but strangely, he was standing in front of his open door again. He asked me to join him for breakfast, but I obviously declined and told him, in a more aggressive manner, to not knock on my door so early. The man didn't seem very happy with my answer and just stood there. Then he said that I didn't have to leave for work for a while, and I had enough time to eat with him. I knew there was something wrong with this guy, as his response was really creepy. I firmly said no and then backed away, closing my door and locking it again. The more I thought about this guy, the creepier and more disturbing the interactions seemed. The rest of the day went by as usual, and I got home around 6. I made some dinner, watched a movie, and got ready for bed around 11. As I laid in bed, I kept thinking about my creepy neighbor and wondered what to do about it. I decided that if anything else happened, I'd contact the owner of the complex and have him talk to the guy. I leaned over, turned off my lamp, and tried to fall asleep. But a few minutes later, I heard the neighbor's door creak open. I waited silently, listening to what he was doing, but I couldn't hear anything else. Again, I never heard the door close. I was pretty nervous, unsure of what the man could possibly be doing this late at night. Eventually, though, I drifted off to sleep since I didn't hear any further noises for over an hour. I'm not sure how long I slept before a loud knock woke me up. But these knocks didn't come from my front door, they were at my bedroom door. I shot up, completely terrified, and turned on the lights. The only thing I had to defend myself with was a small screwdriver on my nightstand. I grabbed it and stood next to my bed, shaking in fear, before picking up my phone and calling 911. When the police arrived at the front door, I quickly got out of my room and opened it. I was surprised the bedroom door was even shut. I told the officers everything, including my suspicions about the neighbor. Unfortunately, there was no real evidence of a break-in, and they couldn't do much. I knew what I heard was real, though, and I didn't feel safe in my apartment anymore. I called my sister later that day, and she agreed to let me stay at her place for a few days. Those days went by quicker than I had hoped, and on Saturday evening, I started driving back to my apartment. I tried to stay calm, assuring myself that the guy had probably given up by now and everything would be okay. I pulled into the parking lot and made my way into the building. The sun had just set, so the staircase was dim. I slowly made my way up, trying to stay quiet so my neighbor wouldn't know I was coming. Once I reached the top, I saw his door was closed, and I felt a big sense of relief. I quickly made my way into my apartment and locked the door behind me. I dropped my bag in the hallway and turned on the lights. As I turned the corner into my living room, I jumped back, screaming, as the man was sitting right on my couch, staring at me with a wide, awful smile. I sprinted out of the entire complex and into my car, then called the police again and waited in a nearby parking lot. When the police arrived about 10 minutes later, we drove up to the complex, and they went into the apartment while I waited by my car. Surprisingly, they came out just a minute later with the man in handcuffs. They said he was still sitting on the couch and that they found a small knife in his pocket. The most disturbing part of this whole situation was that when he was questioned, he admitted to breaking in 3 separate times. I only knew about the 2 incidents, which meant that at one point, he was hiding in my apartment, probably watching me without me even knowing.